you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to the first meeting of 2022. Hope you all had a good holiday season. We have quite a few things to get through. Might not look like much on the agenda, but there's things that'll take some time, so just ask everybody to be brief if we can, and so we can move through all this in a timely manner. And if I have to interrupt you, I'll apologize in advance, but I want to get through at least through item 6B if possible. So let's start with a roll call. Amanda
Kelly
and is here.
is here.
Peter
Lennon here.
Rob,
Present.
Mark,
Here.
and Chris Weeks, I'm here as well. The minutes taker, I will do it this time. We've gone from Mark to Peter. Mark used to sit where Amanda was.
Fill your chair.
I'll take the minutes for this meeting. Item 2, meeting minutes from 12-2 meeting from Peter. Did everybody have a chance to look at those?
Yeah, I just had one clarification. Basically, you just asked me, Peter. Toward the end where it was talking about what I asked for wasn't a final draft, but for the data. So.
Oh, okay, I got it.
You can just change that.
Oh, and the next to the last page. Okay.
So like number 6 at the bottom, ADA study.
Yeah, I was just asking for the data, not the final draft.
What do we call it? The data that,
The DAC track data.
and that is all the building facility, I mean, that's all.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in a
Okay.
later item.
Yep,
All right, great.
that's
Thanks.
item 5. We want to make sure we get to.
Okay, great.
Did anyone else have any items for the minutes? Or any-
I wasn't present at the
Okay.
meeting, so I don't have any comments.
I don't have any comments. Rob, did you have any?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so do we want to move to accept them with the
So moved.
change?
Second.
All
Aye.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Minutes are accepted 4-0, with Mark abstaining. I can't remember who was here at that meeting, it was so long ago now. All right, item 3, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, we do the officer selection at the beginning of the year for each committee, is that correct?
I don't know when this one got appointed. I'd have to look at my master sheet. When did everyone get appointed?
I thought at the beginning of the year is when we
Feel that
decided
long
on
ago, but-
officers. I thought that's what Russ said last year.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's different with the committee, because like in planning board, I think it's May, so
Oh, yeah, I thought for us it was the beginning of the year. Rob, do you remember what?
That's what we did last year, because that's when I.
then I do it the same way you did.
All right, so I think, I don't know if we had a secretary last year. We probably won't have a secretary this year since we're rotating with the minute taking. So we have the chair, the vice chair positions. I don't think there's anything beyond that. So does anybody have any nominations for chair and vice chair? Anybody want to throw their hat in the ring?
Can I make a motion that it stays the same?
I'm going to have to make a qualifier.
Okay.
I'm going to step off the committee as of the end of April this year. That's when my term is up. So I don't really think I should really be the vice chair because of that.
Nope.
So,
Makes sense.
That's too bad, Peter.
well, it's been almost 4 years here and
Okay.
almost 4 years at the budget committee. And, time for new.
You have to bring your own replacement, though, so you
Yeah,
bring
exactly.
Time for some new blood. Well, I've got a neighbor I'm going to chat up. I don't know anything about him other than the fact that he's Coast Guard and retiree and he knows facilities and engineering.
Okay.
So I have no
please
earthly
do.
idea. He knows a lot about energy systems. But again, he's just moved to town. So he's even more of a newbie then.
which maybe he'll agree to it then.
Yes.
No, he's gonna-
Well, I'll be candid with him. So I will, do my best to chat him up. I've already talked to him once, but
All right,
he
well,
didn't.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that's it.
Well,
We could continue on, continue on till April with the current thing, and then re-vote for officers in April?
I guess
that
so.
idea.
I mean, I'm
Fine.
happy to do this for another year, and then after this year, I'm done with it. I think 2 years is enough for chair. I think rotating it around is not a bad
No,
idea
Yeah, sure.
in getting new blood into it, so. I'm happy to keep doing it this year, so, and then, yeah, I guess we
I guess
can,
that's in April, so.
Yeah, and I'll be obviously happy to do it until
Yeah,
April.
okay.
End
That
of
way,
April, end of
in April, we can, if we do have a replacement or somebody else that possibly wants to step into some role, then
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to make a motion as such?
I make a motion that we move our election to specifically the vice chair till the April timeframe.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
We are going through this agenda.
Hopefully we can do that. Not breaking any laws or anything. Is that trustees of the trust taking up too much of your time? Because I can have a word with them.
No, not at
How
all.
about that?
Not at all.
All right.
I do intend, or I want to try to get more involved in that, but I'm still in the data gathering on that.
Okay. So the next item is, Peter was kind enough to put together the list of accomplishments and room for improvement. Did anyone have any comments on that? And I forget what the deadline is when we need to submit that to
It's
the...
going to go into the annual report, right?
Well, it can. I mean, it's up to the chair to determine what kind of goes into the annual report.
But I think that's the intent, right, is at the end of the year that each of the committees would file something for the annual report.
Correct. And what the content is, I guess, is up to you
Yeah, right.
folks, yeah.
Yeah, and when is the deadline for that?
I think Pam sent an email, January 14th is the
Oh, okay.
due date,
All right,
so next Friday.
Yeah, so
all right.
it's very timely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is working out well. Did anyone have any comments on that?
I just added the two highlighted areas that you had, Peter, which was the X meetings that narrowed down X architecture and municipal.
Right, I didn't know what those were because I wasn't part of that process, so I was hoping that,
So that was really for
Chris, who
Chris
was
and
part of the
Mark.
process, and Mark.
Well, the other thing too, I had a comment on that, Rob, as well.
Yep.
And I would edit this, and I can edit this to expand it, just to say, we spent a considerable amount of time in the spring, I think it was the spring, pushing for the feasibility study approach, working with the town to try to work through what that would look like, and then we worked a lot as a group and with the town on the RFQ that we ultimately issued, that the town issued, and got a really good response for that, so I just want to stick all that stuff in there.
Was that all in this year? I didn't put some of that in because I couldn't remember if it was this year or
I
last year.
couldn't either. I'll have to go back and look at last year.
But that's great, that's fine. I mean, I
It
put
was,
that
I think
right
it was the
under.
spring, because the interviews were this
I feel
summer,
like
right?
the first half of this year was pretty much consumed with that.
The RFQ really was drafted in last year, right, prior to, and then we executed the RFQ. But
Was that-
I think it doesn't really matter. I think the reality is it's a continuation of the same thing, which is following through on and working with the town to help get that language all together and then vet the folks that solicited proposals.
That's true, yeah, we did work through all that. Yeah, that was, when we read through those proposals, that must have been around this summer.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah, it was.
you said the RFP out, it was like early summer, right? Late spring?
Yeah, the RFQ was finalized in, we're talking about the fire station complex.
Public safety
right?
complex,
Yeah, that was done in, I think, May. We issued it in June,
Right.
came back in July, we reviewed over August.
Yeah.
And then we entered a contract in September.
Right.
Yeah.
So why don't you just make that number
Yep, I'll make that.
4, Chris? Just insert that as a new number 4.
Yeah, okay.
And then you can renumber everything else.
Yeah, you sent this as a Word document, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll edit that and add that.
And then obviously, if you want to put the number of meetings in and the number of candidates that were, that's up to you. I just threw it there because
Yeah.
it was data.
There were, how many proposals were there? 14, something?
Yeah, 16 maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe 15 or 16, there was,
Yeah.
yeah. It was a lot.
There was a good chunk of those were pretty well qualified too, I'd say at least half of them were really good submissions.
Yeah, and I just put those down because I thought they were hard data points that we
Yeah.
could show. So whatever the right number is, or even if you put a range band of, 15 to 16, that's good
Yeah.
enough.
And then,
If you want to.
okay, and then my only other comment I have, I'll stick in somewhere around the FCA, we did collaborate with the DPW, I've met a couple times with Jen Perry to discuss what that would look like. We did get the People GIS demo done. I don't know if you guys all had a chance to watch that or not.
Yep.
I think that was about it for accomplishments. For improvements, I think you caught it somewhere in there. We didn't get any alternate members. Now we have to fill another membership role in the team in April. Timely forwarding of recommendations. I dropped the ball a couple of times on those. And then one of the things I'll add too is we did better this year integrating with the town's schedule, but we probably could even do a little better next year. And I think that's something we've gotten better at over the last couple of years as we get more awareness of what the town processes are and what we can do to fit in there. So I think we can do even better next year.
So you'll add those.
Yep, all of that stuff.
Great.
All right, did anyone else have any more comments on accomplishments and room for improvement? No, good?
No.
Okay. So let's move on to item number 5 on the agenda, the ADA study. And this one, I'm not too sure what's going on with this, so I'm going to turn it over to Amanda and she can lead this discussion.
All right, so basically, what we were working on was trying to just figure out what was done in the study as far as data points that were taken, because the draft, or almost final draft, just referenced the stack track system a bunch of times, so we were trying to get in there, we got in there, and I downloaded everything out of there, and we can figure out, just tell me how to get it into our committee files. It's a lot.
Can you tell me more what the DAC track is?
Yep, I'm gonna pass these down.
Okay.
There's a lot of information. I printed 3 as just sort of examples. So here is the town hall. It's 25 pages. That's just one. Peter, I don't have that much paper.
Oh, no, that's all right. No, I just was,
I just printed 3. I didn't print copies for everybody.
right.
So that's the town hall, that's
so we
the
got it all
municipal
together.
parking lot,
Oh,
that's
these are improvements
kids'
and such.
park. So there's
Oh, wow.
parks, sidewalks, intersections, and then buildings. And each of the things that was identified was gone through by this consultant, and if you want to just send a couple down, Chris, there's 2 more.
Yeah,
that
I
they can
will,
look
I
at.
will.
Okay.
This is 35
take your
pages
time.
of just the town
Of
hall?
just the town hall, so that's why I didn't
Holy
print
moly.
all of them, because there's town offices, there's a lot, and each one has,
Must be a lot of detail then.
Yeah.
it's very detailed. I can't believe this was only $35,000.
It was 19,400.
Wow.
We
It's like,
budgeted
It was
35.
budgeted 35, and I didn't know how much it actually cost. That was a question, thank you.
Who ended up doing the,
Disability access consultants out of the Midwest, they just,
It's
their
incredible.
proposal was like, wow, just leaps and bounds, as far as cost and what they were offering, and we vetted them, and I think they did a great job. They came to the sites and they did a full analysis on all our buildings that we asked them to do.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, I have it all in Excel and in a PDF form. There's like probably, let's say 25 or so.
So is it exportable, from?
I already have it in Excel.
Right, so it's
into
already
Excel.
exported, yeah,
Yep,
that's great.
And I just don't know how to share it with everybody, but
Yep.
it's in my Dropbox right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Basically, we can post it to the website and
Well, I don't know if we can post it to the website. I don't know if it's,
to our,
we have our own internal part.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so we can all look at it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you-
perfect. I just don't know how to do that.
They
Yeah,
they literally
I'll-
hit every little item
that.
as separate.
Set up.
And each item is, they even put a cost estimate on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty great.
so the question is it'd be good to look at what the executive summary is, because obviously, from a compliance standpoint, there's the one which is when is it you're required to do the actual work? To sit there and say, in other words, what triggers compliance with the ADA and ANSI requirements, to sit there and say, how do you prioritize these so that you can actually get them, into I think that's probably what you want to try to do, is to help prioritize the items, that one of the goals.
And I think maybe Doug might have more information on that. I don't know if you know, but I think it probably, as far as I know, the only thing I know is that when you're gonna do a significant amount of work, that's definitely one of the triggers.
Right, it's 30% of the.
Thank you.
Over the total cost of the facility.
Well, but isn't that different also though for government buildings? I thought government buildings are required to do a certain amount no matter what, because they're public buildings.
All public buildings, so if you even go through the requirements for public buildings and for government buildings and everything else, is it's obviously you get the ADA, which is the federal.
Yeah.
And then you have the state, which is the ANSI.
Yeah, I guess, okay, there's that, but then New Hampshire has adopted their own accessible.
That's why it's
right?
kind of,
So-
yes, they have their own, so
Yeah.
there's multiple
Right.
compliance pieces, and depends on what industry, right, you're in.
Right, because I know New Hampshire has some unique differences between what ADA.
Yep.
I mean, that's the minimum, right? So New Hampshire has done something a little bit different on a few items that I know that has affected us. So they're looking at the federal ADA, not the New Hampshire. So it's just I'm assuming there's some.
I would assume that they probably look at both the state of New Hampshire accessibility codes, like you would if you're in Massachusetts, the AAB. But it'd be good to actually go
Yeah.
to see this and then go through the list.
Yeah, I
The
don't
ADA
know
and-
if there was an executive summary that had any sort of more information on timeline
Yeah.
in there, but we might have to do that ourselves.
Because it would be like, you sit there and say, codes and standards in which they were looking at when they did the evaluation.
Yeah, I think if we
Because-
look down the right column, it tells you which code and standard it was based on. And you
violates.
can sort of infer backwards from there. I
Yeah,
think
because
they're
all these right here
the
basically
federal.
look like they're all, say,
ADA.
ADA.
Yeah, it does, but I think that's.
So the reality is that you have the ADA standards, but then you have other standards that don't, they're different,
Yep,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is to what happens, you have to do the kind of crosswalk for some things that may comply or don't comply with, like the state of New Hampshire.
sure.
Well, typically too, what I run into is they both apply, and it's the more onerous one. that-
Right, most restrictive is the, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there any total cost, Amanda?
No, but you could sum them all up. Because they're in Excel.
Do we need to hear from somebody as to how the ADA process, the compliance process works? I mean, who's going to tell Doug Eastman what's the most important stuff that he should focus on as far as bringing which buildings into compliance or areas, if it's a parking lot?
This is
Sooner or later.
This is the awesome list, because you know what it does? It is something that goes into our FCA, which is
Sure.
part of the thing, and it's already in a database format, so that it can be imported into that. And then what happens is that if you go back through and someone could look through these things and begin to prioritize them. You give the 1, a 2, a 3, a 4 with a key on it, and then every year, you sit there and say, we're gonna budget X amount of dollars to go through and start to comply with these requirements, and to sit there and that starts to build your budget.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah.
That's after the fact. What I want to know is right now, I mean, by the time we get into our FCA and we start noodling on it, it's a year. So the question I have is, I don't even know if there's any ADA money in the budget now for compliance, okay? But the question is, A, is giving the building inspector the job, is he the right person to be the right focal point for this? Not taking anything away from Doug, but I mean, you know, if this is important to do and if it's going to cost a fair amount of money, it needs to have some kind of champion higher up in the government of the town to make sure that the right amount of dollars get put in the budget requests, A. B, to make sure that if those budget requests are approved, that those projects actually get done. So who's going to do that? Is it going to be left up to Doug and to the DPW? Because if the DPW is going to handle ADA stuff the way they handle their maintenance budgets, I'm not certain we're going to see a lot of improvement in the ADA compliance situation for some time. And so if it's really important, and it was important enough to spend the money on this and all the data, then who's the Stucky's not the right term, but who's responsible for going beyond this to actually execute it? Is it us? Are we supposed to be the drivers of that kind of stuff?
Well, let's ask Dave. Do you have any idea how, so we have the report now, do you have any idea how it gets prioritized and executed?
Well, I was under, this is what we do, let me just back up for a second. The federal law requires that you have to have an evaluation, an ADA evaluation of your buildings, and you have to have a transition plan on how you're gonna go from A to B. That, to meet those federal requirements. This meets those federal requirements. We have that in place. There's not necessarily any trigger that I'm aware of, except like that you have to bring the second floor of the rec building up to ADA, unless you have meeting or public, like this meeting has to be ADA accessible. You have to do it. If it's not, you have to do it, you know, in order to have a meeting here, or you don't have a meeting. The next step, and we started this and then COVID hit and kind of threw everything sideways, but it was the understanding, Jeff Beck from maintenance, Doug Eastman, the ADA coordinator, would go through this, and the DAC Track software actually allows you and encourages you, has already a space to prioritize and then give a time frame and so forth, and it tracks those, and as you complete them, you say completed, and they drop off the list, and you move on. That was my understanding. No one's ever been like, we haven't gotten to that stage where what you're asking to say, okay, but we were at the stage where it was assumed that Jeff Beck, they're the closest because they're doing the maintenance work on the buildings. Jeff Beck is the kind of overseeing the maintenance of the buildings, and Doug Eastman's the ADA coordinator. So those were the two obvious candidates, but nothing's been stone or anything has been done on that stage yet that I'm aware of.
So federal law requires you to do a minimum, right? You have to have, like, you have an elevator, you have accessible entrances and that sort of thing, right? So you have to meet a minimum standard no matter what. So there may be things in that report that are triggered, like, oh, we have to do this. This is part of the minimum that we missed. So you may, like, say there's not an accessible bathroom in this building that gets hit, you got to do it. That's a requirement, and do it. And then the other ones, this is your prioritization, may come up as, well, it's a priority too. When we renovate, we need to do this, right?
Yeah, that's what's great about that list.
Yeah, so that's where I think, so Peter, for you, I think it's like somebody has to go through and say, this is by law, we have to do this, which is probably going to be a Doug and Jeff Beck thing. Or the consultant probably said that. And then after that, you're like, okay, so when we renovate, we have to make sure we address these, or then we start looking at maybe there's some good things that they should be doing, just to make sure that it's good for the public, that we have better facilities or something like that. But overall, it should be DPW.
Well, somebody should be telling DPW what needs to be done. I don't know if DPW is the right focus area for. They will execute the projects probably in a lot of ways, or they might do the contracting for execution of the projects. But Jen Perry's got a lot of other important things that she thinks are important and will want to do before she, I believe, that will compete for her time and her department's time for ADA. And it'll be a competition for, within that department. I don't know whether that, if we're going to make progress for compliance, I don't know whether or not that's the best place for the policy and the leadership to be. It might be the right place for the execution, but not for the priority setting. And it might not be the right place for having the networking with the disability community to know, what their take is on all this stuff, and to get a sense as to what's really important to them, so that can be factored in with what the town thinks is really important, to at least be aware of if there are any differences.
Yeah, the entity that's in charge of the physical plan of the facilities should be the one that is responsible for this. But yes, they should have input from others about prioritization, no different than when you're looking at a building is regarding the heating system, electrical system, or whatever else is out of code. There needs to be a help with the prioritization, saying, is that more important than roads and highways or something like that? But the entity that's responsible for maintaining the buildings they should be the ones that are take ownership of this. Well, in our case, it's DPW. That's just organizationally, that's where it is.
Going back to Peter's question, is this something that the facilities committee could help start the prioritization piece of it to look at some of these items and obviously, Amanda, you probably have a great perspective on what things are, what are compliance things and what are practical things that actually on a day-to-day basis from somebody in our community using the facilities, what are the barriers? And to me, that would be somebody that you see them all the time, so that you'd be able to go through and very quickly identify things on a just daily basis. What's a barrier?
So as far as report content, we have the DAC track output, and somebody asked for a summary or something?
Well, there's also the executive summary. Dave passed us the executive summary.
Okay.
That was labeled draft, but if the only change is that Dick Kane is no longer the coordinator and Doug Eastman is, that's a hand change on one page.
Yeah.
And then we can treat this as a final.
Okay.
And in it, there are high sounding statements about, the town should do this, or the town can do that, or the town is doing this. But if you look at the budgets over the last few years, it's kind of up and down. In other words, there was money put aside, I think some money a couple years ago in a fund. There's something about a fund here that that exists already for ADA work.
When that was done, we were proposing that as a capital reserve fund. That's we originally proposed it to 35,000 and was going to do the study, and then any leftover money was going to get used for any implementation or some low, and we would have had about $16,000 left had we done that. That got shot down at the capital reserve fund, and it was only a one-time budget expenditure. So when we saved that 16,000, it went into the general fund. Sure. It never went back to a capital reserve.
And that's kind of my underlying concern is that this report, which may get us past a certain level of compliance, it's beyond wishful thinking, but it suggests that more is being done than actually is being done. Nobody went, or did they? Nobody went to Russ and said, hey, Russ, here's all the DAC track stuff, and we know there's a list of this and that and the other, and we think we need this amount of money in this year, meaning FY22, to begin chipping away at this stuff that we know is a high priority. I don't know if they did that with the
Not yet.
Yeah.
No, that has not been done.
So that, we can't assume it's going to be done unless somebody lights a fire under the town bureaucracy. And that's my question. Who lights that fire? And who encourages them to do the right thing and to make this a priority beyond the hiring a consultant, who I think, based on what Amanda says and what you can read here, it's a good start, but it's a baby step.
Well, I think even without saying we need to light a fire, we could just ask them what their schedule is, what their timeline is for at least setting the priorities and then executing, or beginning to execute the work, I guess. So,
So maybe we need to have Doug come in and talk
or
to us.
just send an email to Doug and Jeff and say, hey, you know, what's your guys' timeline for doing this?
Okay,
So,
all right.
and then go from there.
Okay.
And I can't assume that they're not gonna do anything with it unless prompted, if we have no idea what their schedule is. And I guess the other thing too, to Rob's point, Peter, it sounds like you've read the report.
No, I haven't really. I've skimmed little pieces of it, you know.
Yeah, so I didn't know if that had any indications on what they would consider priorities, you know.
It's a
would-
lot of like narrative about how important accessibility is and kind of like, kind of odd to me ways that, things that aren't just facilities related that are accessibility, which I just didn't expect, I agree with, but didn't expect in this kind of report. It was very narrative, wasn't a lot of like
Okay.
instructive.
And they made that
in the
clear to
report.
us. Yeah,
This was the instructive part.
That was the specific,
Yeah.
but they didn't prioritize, like I think what you were asking.
No.
They didn't make that, because they're like, no, that is up to you what to prioritize, because a lot of these, as you see, have much different price tags, and, you know, what's a priority, and cost should be evaluated too, but that's not our job, that, you know, that should be
Yeah,
left
that's
to the
not in
town.
there.
So again, if you want to just do it by email, that's fine.
And we could ask Doug if he wants to come to the next meeting, I can try that too.
If you got, I think it would be worth it to hear him say that what he has in mind for the next steps
All right.
on this, and how he intends to, A, get the stuff budgeted, and B, you know, how are he and the DPW going to work together to actually execute the projects?
What's their schedule for getting it done?
And those kinds of, you know, because again, this is a lot of great intention, but
Yeah, we just need to know the tactics for how we're gonna get there and what the time frame is to do it.
I think any help would be, I mean, we had that conversation, you and I, about, like, I was ecstatic that Amanda would take this and kind of, because I think it was needed. It's just like a lack of resources. I mean, Doug in building department, COVID hit, and we lost our electrical inspector, and we've been unable to hire one, so he's been taking on those duties. So it would be, you know, any help on this would be appreciated, but it is, you know, it is important. I mean, they overwhelmingly voted for the study, so
Yeah.
it was very important, but we just got to get that champion. So
Okay.
I'm glad to hear this conversation, actually.
Okay.
And do we have the software?
We do.
I logged into it with Doug.
So it's a web-based software?
It's online.
Yep.
Doug has to log in.
Good.
Yeah.
I just sent you the link to our account, so. I sent you the
Oh,
link.
thank you.
Yeah, so you can
I can't get on the Wi-Fi for some reason.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, it came with the 19,400 for the project. They provided the software.
No, that's great.
Yeah, no, it was a great project, and I think I agree with the committee. Just let's keep moving it forward.
No, that's-
I think it's good to keep in mind too, what Mark was alluding to. You know, the only one I know specifically that was like recently passed since this was done, was it last January? My sense of time is off a little bit. The state legislature passed a specific law for buildings that have more than X number of people a day, including libraries, et cetera, have to have a different kind of accessible bathroom. And like, there's a lot of things that are state specific beyond
Right.
this that I think, I'm not sure how we'll wrangle those in, but are going to be missing.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Good discussion on that. So I will reach out to Doug and see what he thinks coming to the next meeting, or at least giving me the information that I can relay in the next meeting about their plans for next steps. So let's move on to item 6A. We got a couple more big items. We're doing pretty good on time. So the next one is the facility condition assessment, CIP item. So let me try to figure out what we need to discuss here. One is we need to get the letter to the select board. I can do that tomorrow. So we can discuss any changes to the letter that we will submit, and then
The letter,
recommendations on, well, I guess we were going to submit a letter to the select board on CIP items, including the,
oh, yes, right, the one from previously, yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So I
Which
will-
Amanda wrote, and we had minor changes to.
And I will submit that to the select board tomorrow, and then I'll get on the agenda of one of their meetings to be available to present and discuss the FCA with them as needed.
But before you do that, I really do think we have to resolve the differences that appear to be between our concept for the FCA and its execution and the Budget Committee's concept. I sent you guys the paper trail for all this, and it's really not clear to me that they don't think it's anything more than giving the DPW the action to do all of this and to only focus it on maintenance items. And Mark tried to at the meeting, according to the
Yeah, did
minutes.
you watch the meeting?
No, I didn't. I read the minutes. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
All right.
And Mark tried to, let them understand that it was more than just maintenance, and indeed was the entire facility asset base of the town. But the language counts, and the language that the Budget Recommendations Committee used both for the FCA and for the DPW garage, personally, I think is problematic. If you guys don't, and
Well,
Amanda, if you
I-
don't think it's problematic, fine, let's not worry about it.
I watched this session, thank you for teeing that up for us,
Yeah.
Amanda.
Yeah,
So
I watched it too.
I watched the BRC session that Mark went to, and I came away with a different feeling. I was actually pretty positive. I felt like the literacy of what the FCA was and what the asset management that would occur from it was much better understood, I feel like, by a wider range of people than just, some of them.
Yeah, I mean, I felt we went back and forth about who was going to be doing the work.
Yes.
And then we talked about, the people GIS came up a lot as far as, so I just kept saying I didn't know the system, and that was an option. But I tried to explain that we couldn't do it, that we wouldn't be able to do the work
Right,
ourselves, and that it's more than just DPW. And I felt like that the majority of the folks, they approved the money. So knowing that that we would be hiring a consultant to do it. So I felt like that they understood. I'm not sure, I was just looking at what you had given us.
Okay, so the language that says that the FCA, the BRC support for the FCA only with explicit oversight and management by DPW and planning departments. I have no issue with the way Dave may execute that language, but I don't know how DPW is going to execute it. And if you leave the oversight and management to DPW, other than the execution of the day-to-day tasks in the database, I'm not confident you're going to get anything more than them choosing people GIS because they're comfortable with the system and just using that. So it raises questions in my mind as to whether or not it's going to be a full and open competition for those contractors beyond people GIS. One. Two, I really don't know whether the DPW, beyond the day-to-day execution, is really in a position or should be in a position to manage FCA. Now, again, you guys are all, and Amanda are all more aware of what FCA is and how it works. And if you have confidence in DPW and Dave to have them have the explicit oversight and management of the FCA, including source selection.
Well,
Okay.
let's step back a little bit.
Is that from the
So,
minutes or from the warrant?
This language, oh yeah, sure. The language, again, this is what Bud,
Yeah, from the minutes.
one of the things, Peter,
this is Bob's briefing. It's not
one of
from
the
minutes.
outcomes
But it's not
from,
from legal language, it's from somebody's.
Well, when Bob Kelly, the chairman of the Budget Committee, explicitly turns in a piece of paper to the select board that has that language, then that's an expression institutionally of the Budget Recommendations Committee's position. And so if language counts for anything, I am concerned that's too much of a straitjacket for the FCA. And again, just my concern.
Let me say this. One of the things that was very clear to me from watching the meeting too is everybody, BRC, DPW, Select Board, all understood that the FCA was going to be conducted by a consultant. Like Mark said, we're not doing it, DPW is not doing it, it's going to be led by a consultant. So the FCA itself will be done by a third party. As far as selection, it was also very clear to me from the meeting, not necessarily, I breezed through those minutes that you attached, but, DPW does lean towards People GIS, but at the same time, there's other people, Select Board and us, who, in the town, the way we conduct the RFP, there are going to be solicitations, proposals from other businesses that do it besides People GIS. And one of the things we said in the RFP that we crafted is that whoever does the FCA, we want their data to be able to be imported into the People GIS system. So if we think of People GIS as the software on the back end that's going to handle receiving the data, that's might be the way it's going to go. We're not locked into it. We can look at other systems, but that one is something that we want to entertain and review. So, and as far as the rest of it, explicit oversight by planning and DPW, we're not going to be the explicit.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think this is more like, instead of a volunteer committee being the oversight, that he's just like adding in that like, it's not going to be run by the facilities committee. It's going to be run by town departments, and there's not a lot of town departments, so these are the two that made sense.
Yeah.
Right, okay, I think,
And one of Bob's concerns is that if DPW doesn't buy into it, then the system isn't going to work.
Yeah.
well, that's true.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if it occurs as the way you have all described it, then fine. But when I see language that explicit about explicit oversight and management, they didn't write on a daily basis. They just said explicit oversight and management. If that explicit oversight and management means that they don't necessarily even have to use our RFP for the task, then I want to know about that. And I want them to say, no, that's not what it means. Again.
Well, I think.
So you're going to the select board though, Chris, right?
Yeah.
This could be a good, for you to clarify this, that
Yeah,
what
I
our
agree.
intent is that, and we'll have a letter that's going to go to them. So I think it's a good thing to bring up, Peter, when he goes to the select board and say that we just want to clarify that we believe strongly that it's an RFP process and that, you know what I mean? So I think it's a good one to clarify.
What, do we want to put that in the letter? A paragraph like that in the letter?
I don't remember the letter, but
I think it would be a good thing to have it in the letter, is
Yeah.
to say that we've drafted this, we've kind of been working on this same concept for 2 years now, and that this is the framework in which we've got consensus that this is the way it should happen.
I think it's important that.
Say they definitely is gonna happen, but.
No, but I think it's important that the town see other proposals, because you don't know what you don't know, and People GIS is a good solution. They've interviewed them. There's going to be others that maybe they can't compete cost-wise, but.
Yeah, People GIS, they haven't done the assessment part.
No.
So
No, so you're going to be hiring somebody to do that part.
I could also see a partnership. I could see
Yeah.
somebody else, another firm going out and saying, look, we're going to partner with People's GIS, and we're going to sit there and we're going to do the field work. We're going to write the reports, and then we're going to have
Right.
People's GIS put it into their system. I think this is the best of both worlds, is that ultimately you could take the report that we had from 2015 and sit there and say, hey, write this in a way in which it can be imported into a database. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Okay.
May
Well,
I just add to that, to what to answer your specific question, I think, is that I wasn't at that meeting when they added the planning department, but I think it's like, just my experience with issuing RFQs, doing the evaluations, the criteria, and so forth, is that's my involvement here. And And if that's the case, I had every intention of using your, there wasn't any doubt that that's what was, that I put it in the CIP, put the page in the CIP, I helped it. This is your assessment that, not necessarily yours, it's the town's, but I worked on your recommendation, so I have every intention of using your RFP.
I think that's good, and I think it's good to clarify the select board what the intent is,
Yeah,
Put that on record.
thank you, Dave, that's really important. And I'm not gonna volunteer to write that paragraph, because I don't know as much
I
as you
can do
guys.
that, yeah. Like, I'll submit the letter tomorrow and I'll make sure something like that might already be in there.
Yeah, I would just say recommending that there's an RFP process and the multiple vendors
Because I
included.
didn't know it.
Right, yeah.
I think it'd be a sentence or a couple sentences and you talk to it.
All right, so I will do the letter tomorrow and then I will reach out to select board about getting on their agenda.
There's another issue on the letter, do you want to do that before you get to the public safety study?
Yeah, and I had another thing I wanted to bring up.
Because it's the DPW project, well, it's a different thing, but it involves DPW.
Oh, on the letter, on the recommendations? Yeah,
Yeah.
let's get through everything else first. Yeah, if it's specific to the DPW CIP item, if I can get my acronyms
Yeah,
right here.
it is.
All right, let's do that after we talk about public safety. The last thing on facilities condition assessment is, Peter, you sent this blurb out. Is this all that's the text we have for the CIP item now, or is it more?
Yes.
Is there more? There's nothing?
There will be an explanation. Somebody writes, and Dave helped me on this, who writes the warrant article explanation? There's a handout that either at the table when you go in to vote or before that explains all the warrant articles and all the verbiage in them. And then there's the warrant article itself. That's just the warrant article itself. That's
Yeah.
not the only thing that the voters have access to.
My point on this one, it's a little incomplete in that it doesn't include like the asset management software that comes out of this too, which is part of that $45,000, right? We do the assessment plus the software.
It's all in.
For the ongoing asset management. So right now, it just looks like an assessment, and that's it. So I guess I'd like to
It's a
add
DOA.
something in there about that, this also includes the asset management software that plugs into our existing system and allows for the ongoing
Should it
asset management for the
Should
town.
it allude to the fact that it would pull in other existing data as well? It's not just new data, but old data?
Yeah.
So there is data that's not in the system, there's new data that needs to be collected, and that's all gonna be coming together.
Maybe, those descriptions you can't put too much in there, I know. I just want to make it clear that there's another part to this.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
ongoing software portion.
Let me look into that, because usually, if I have something like a zoning amendment, I usually draft the warrant article and draft the description.
Yeah, and that explanation can be, I've seen half a page of words
All right.
describing what the warrant article really does. But to your point of the actual warrant article itself not having enough language, that's another thing that we should take to the select board before their budget hearing. Their hearing on the 18th, is it the 18th, Dave?
Yes, the bond and budgeting.
Is the final stuff.
Yeah.
And they'll.
Goes in the warrant, yeah.
And they'll decide
Yeah.
the final wording on the warrant. That stuff's just draft, I
Okay.
believe. So we have an opportunity between now and then to.
Upgrade it?
To submit.
Okay.
A separate, separate language, different language.
Okay.
Or additional language.
I think that's.
We just have to send it to Dave, right? Dave said he'll be responsible for drafting this?
No, he was
No,
talking about his
whenever he-
past.
Well, that's what I was just explaining. I don't know if anyone, I probably could, with your help.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've been out and now I'm back, but I was involved with
Yeah.
this writing of the warrant article. So usually I am involved, or the department that's actually proposing it ends
Right.
up, drafting it in consultation with the town manager, who has the final say on the wording and the language and
Yeah.
reviews it.
And since we're the department that's proposing it, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, this
Yeah.
one is it's coming from the DPW because we had to attach it to a
Right.
department and it makes the most sense.
Okay.
But
Right.
it really was born from the work of this committee.
So I think,
I think,
I'm sorry.
yeah, I think we should try to,
Edit it,
Clarify it.
yeah, I'd like to make sure, because if it's gonna be voted on, I want it to be clear that it's not just another report.
Not
Yeah, that's
another
right.
study.
So that is very timely, I believe. That's very timely, so if someone could get me any suggested revisions at ASAP,
Yep.
then I will get them, talk to Russ about it and see
Okay.
how we go about changing that.
All right, I'll try it, since I'm gonna be not authoring, but editing the letter tomorrow, I'll try to get this to you tomorrow, Dave, as far
Okay.
as just some additional verbiage about asset management in there. you know.
And a description if you want to, so, not all of them provide descriptions, but I think it's an optional if I
Yeah.
usually write them, but if you want to provide a description, I'd be happy to have that as well.
Yeah, all right, I'll give you something, if you have to take out some words or something, let me know, because, yeah, I feel like a lot of this stuff is,
I wonder when any of the wording that we had in our
was just gonna say.
PowerPoint there, that summary that basically kind of gave our,
Or the RFP.
the quick synopsis of what the.
We could put those in as, I mean, we could take whatever are the best bullets from each of those PowerPoint slides and put them in half a page and have that as a description if we want it. Or we could take those words and make them into a narrative.
yeah, if you can find anything, Peter, send it to me tomorrow, and we'll see what I can come up with too.
Yeah, the RFP could have a little executive summary that could act as a description. I haven't read it in a while.
Yeah, we'll take a look. I just want to make sure, and it'd be good to get that in prior to the meeting of the 18th, because we were there last year, Peter, they moved through that stuff pretty quickly. If we were to say, hey, let's do this massive rewrite on the fly
Oh, gosh,
in
no.
the meeting, it just
No.
wouldn't happen. So-
My point in bringing this stuff up is to avoid that.
Well, they
Is to
wouldn't do it
have
anyway. They-
have the problem solved
Yeah.
before
No,
the
they
18th.
They wouldn't allow us to do that in the meeting, I don't think, just in the interest of time, so we need to make sure we get that in prior to the meeting. All right, so now, that's all I have for the facility condition assessment management stuff. Did anybody else have any more comments on that? Just on the FCA and?
Just, I have a quick question. If we sent you the PDF of the PowerPoint, Dave, could we get that onto who would we send that to put it on the website?
You can send it to me,
Okay.
and then I can send it to.
Because you figure
Send it on.
there's a lot that's on here that really talks about, and Peter did a lot of work that really went through a summary of, the talking points, what is it, talking points, and then examples that people could look at, so another tool for anybody who's that motivated to go to the town site and see what.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Yeah, send it to me, I certainly can get it
Okay.
on where it needs to be.
All right, we're doing okay on time. I had scheduled this till 5:45, so we got about 20 more minutes, and there's a couple other items we want to get to. We're doing very well. Next one is the public safety complex study. I was just curious, I guess,
I got one.
Dave, I don't know if you have an update for us?
Yeah, I do. That was my first order of business really when I came back to get up to speed with that, and I'm almost there. I met with the chiefs twice, once last week, once this morning, and with LBA, the chiefs and the LBA today. So as far as the scope, going just basically from the RFQ scope of services that was created, they've done the programming review, they visited the thing, multiple teams went there, talked to them, filled out these, and there is a draft report that everyone's reviewing as we speak on the programming to kind of develop what are the space needs for it. There's the preliminary kind of site evaluation, background, confirming infrastructure and so forth. That's been completed. And then the third in this is facilities options, existing conditions evaluation on the current facility, they've done that. Develop possible combinations of a new facility that include all new combined facility, renovate, add to existing facility, or both, renovate existing for one department, build a new for the other on a separate site, other combinations. They've gone through about six combinations spanning the 4 town-owned parcels, which we thought we don't have any other parcel options at this point, that included Holland Way that we own, the 2-acre on Continental, the existing site, and 32 Court Street in light of the rec department. We had them, do some planning there. So they've done all that, done multiple options. LBA and the chiefs did discuss it, kind of 3 of those options kind of floated to the top. For them. And so the next step, and we've asked them to develop an order of magnitude cost estimate on those options. And that's the only thing they're gonna do. And then we'd like to we're gonna ask to come before you folks, present those options and all the other options, and then have a discussion of, okay, are these, with the order of magnitude, are these on the right track? What do you think? Get some feedback. It's very early, there's no, decisions have been made, but we wanted to funnel options and bring somewhat of recommendations and costs to you to have you something to respond. So that will be next month. We wanted to have what we could probably do it this month, but we got a lot of other stuff going on with the budget and the bond hearings and so forth. So we'd like to come before you in February.
Dave, could you
Right.
remind me what's the delivery date for them?
Well, it's based on schedule. They had a more aggressive schedule. Let's see, the contract.
You don't have to be specific.
Yeah.
Again, part of
It's in
this is
here.
that, I don't know where the community involvement comes in, but I'm still concerned that things are moving along and we still haven't seen any kind of when and if there's going to be a community engagement. And, how does that fit into this project plan?
Yeah, there's multiple options. They're all laid out in the RFQ that
Yep.
the committee developed. The first present options in the public forum, number 1. That would be, in February, obviously the public is welcome. We usually use committee venues and committee meetings for these. But then it's a review with residents in a public forum and a second and a third public forum after we kind of get a little further along. So there are 3 that's
In the process that you've gotten to date, has it come up with some data gathering with the public about, before you get too far with some of these options, just to try to help with the programming as far as, what does the public want?
Yeah, that's the purpose of these next few meetings. I mean, we wanted, we wanted to have enough to bring to people to react to, instead of going like kind of,
Which is fine. I just wondering, as far as you're working on this programming, if questions came up about like, would the public prefer to have police downtown or fire down? You know what I mean? Just as, when I say data gathering, it's not a public presentation. It's more like what you've done before with a survey, or, you know what I mean?
well, that's what we plan to do.
Okay.
That's what we plan to do, because of the options, there are multiple options, the Continental site, the Holland Way, downtown. And if that is what it is, we have options to do that, to keep, fire downtown and so forth. So,
Yeah, I guess I was just I guess I'm picking up on Rob's point, before you get too far with finalizing it into 3 options, is like you could use some public input as help to get to those options. Right?
absolutely. I mean, we haven't, all they've done, they haven't designed anything.
No, I know. Yeah.
It is like putting a 17,000 square foot box, on it. It might be, nothing beyond that. It's just kind of a test fit, if you will, on the parcels. Very high level at this point.
No, I totally understand that. I guess it's just, now there's a lot easier ways to get public input, not presentations, just input on some of these things that you could say, hey, we've heard from the public that this is more of their preference or something, just to help you, kind of present some of the options or something like that. You know what I mean? More just to help the process, not to.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna use these forums to do that.
Yeah.
And then, maybe if you have a suggestion after that meeting in February, because we have plenty of time too.
Yeah.
It's not like we're not in August where we're going to the budget committee 2 weeks from now. We have plenty of time.
I think that's exactly the point. The issue is that we want to, start now saying that in preparation for a June start of our, recommending process and getting ready for the next level of is that it would be nice to know that those community meetings have happened and that there's enough weight behind, starting to recommend and coming up with budgets and going thing for the 2023 budget. because that's ultimately would be the goal is the 2023 budget. But yes, I think that, I also don't want, as you're vetting these things, if they're spending a lot of time on cost estimating things that, if 75% of the town said, we don't want something out on Holland Way, then, maybe the effort would be less in a Holland Way exercise versus some other location.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
We haven't got, this is order of magnitude,
Yeah.
cost estimate, just to give people because we felt that was important information, at least to give some semblance as a comparison between options and what the costs would be.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I'm doing a bunch of projects right now. Trying to do cost estimating especially from a design firm doing it, I hate to tell you this, is that that's why we put into the thing that it really, ultimately, they need to do it with somebody who does actual cost estimating versus.
They have one though.
It's not the design firm.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
they have.
No,
they have
it's
one.
a separate third party, they don't work for La Valley.
No, that's good, I'm glad they're using.
It's Jobin or Jobin, however you pronounce that.
Cost estimator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good, and hopefully they're using the cost estimator as part of the process and not, and actually doing it versus back of the napkin. I think that's ultimately what happened when with other projects, so.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough
Oh, we
one.
had a lengthy discussion about that same exact thing. We wanted to, because we didn't want it, we're like, we can't throw out a number and then 2 years from now,
No,
it's
we
a different, we were very clear on that. He was very confident, but those are all great questions. And Rob Robichek, that we asked the same questions to him today.
Yep.
He'll be ready to answer those questions when we come before you in February.
The 32 Court Street, I don't know if that's one of the final three, and I don't know whether we want to know those final three at this point.
I don't even think we should call it Final Three.
Good
No,
point,
it's-
excellent
yeah,
point.
It's not.
Thank you. Did that include the 30, the envelope of the fire museum and the senior center as well?
That is not one of the recommended three options due to its size, and it really doesn't, they'll explain all to you on that, but based on their programming needs and assessment and what they see as their needs, the building can fit, but the parking needs are not even close.
So, and that goes back to the comment I would say before, is that if the community, again, decides that the downtown is a priority to the community, then guess what? That begins to push them to come up with more creative, and they have to change their idealized program to something that actually fits with what the community wants to see. So I do stress the ideas that those guys are going to be here this is a job for them. They're responsible for this thing, but it's the community's paying for it, the community's doing it, and the community should be involved in what gets decided on when it comes down to what happens with our public safety complexes or complex.
Absolutely, that's how we have it set up.
Yeah.
We have to bring something. This is a very fluid process, they're aware of that, and depending on the feedback, that we have to readjust and
Yep.
come up with option 5, 6, 7, 8. We're prepared to do that.
Do you think of those, when you said there's like 3 public components, do you think one of those will be like a survey or something? Something that's not something you have to physically attend? Something
Yeah, it will be, what include, let's see. It was,
There better be
post
websites
options
and
to
things,
project
yeah.
website for public comments.
Yeah.
We'll have some sort of, I'll probably, when it comes to that, probably reach out. What's really been good is the software at RPC called publicinput.com. I've used it a couple of times for a variety of
Yeah.
surveys, and it's gotten the most responses I've ever gotten using any type of comments. I mean, when we went out on I forget what it was, the downtown parking, we got 876 responses.
Wow. Yeah, that's good.
I mean, before that, I'm like, putting a paper survey down and, at the town clerks.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you get 42, or posting on our website, but that public input form really pushes it out to the
Yeah.
different platforms.
Well, especially with COVID and
so-
everything else going on, this is,
Yeah, we'll definitely, when it gets to that stage, we're gonna use every, mechanism to try to get the most input we can.
Yeah.
Because it's just beneficial to us.
No, it's good. I guess I was I was thinking that you can do that now to give you more information for this, what your phase you're in now. So, but you've got it. I mean, that's fine. It's very easy to, these
Yeah.
surveys that you put out are, like Parks and Rec has done a lot of these lately, right? As far as
Yeah.
one through the Facebook and things like that. It's just, anything that to me is that you can say, we have this information from the public to help this process where you are right now. To Rob's point, will save time and options and spin-offs and this and.
Oh, I haven't
Yeah, I mean, we thought maybe this is a miscalculation, but we thought you were the first stop. And then you can, like, we want to hear from you about because, we wanted to hear from you. I
Yeah.
mean,
The only, yeah, I agree with Mark in the sense that right now it seems like we do need, and I don't know how you get this, other than maybe the survey like you just mentioned. How do you get indications from the public what they would like to see? Because we have a situation where the police department would prefer to be outside of downtown, but if the public overwhelmingly would like them to be downtown, then maybe that shifts their options for what their recommended options are going to be.
no, understood. I just don't know, like, developing the survey, what are the questions?
Yeah.
Who decides what they are, that information, so
That's where
we're
you
happy
come
to.
well, I would assume that some of the consultants would have exactly those kinds of things, is that if
That's true,
you're
yeah.
in community engagement, it's kind of like what they did with the town master plan, right? There was a survey that went out, people were engaged in that, so I think that there's people that have the skills to put together those types of surveys and.
Oh, yeah, I think we can put it together, that's not an issue, I think we're just talking about when.
Yeah.
I think that's the question.
Yeah,
And we figured we would come to you, have the first public forum in February, get the word out there, and then ask for feedback.
Yeah.
That's kind of what.
Yep.
All right,
Got it.
that's good.
Yep, that's good. And I don't know if do they have a schedule roughed out then, Dave, for like when the rest of the public presentations will be and such, and?
No, that's determined by us, and, we're gonna take whatever time, they wanna go, like, private firms, like, but we're like, we are, they'd wanna come probably at the next meeting with you, but we're like, no, we were gonna,
Yeah.
take things, so we
Yeah.
dictate that schedule.
All right.
And I think we're just taking it next step, because it's a fluid, and we don't know if it's gonna take a right or a left, or keep going straight, or what have you, so we're keeping it open, but what our overall goal is obviously work through this spring and summer, and then have something ready to start the, maybe potentially in the CIP and the budget process. So everything's gonna ideally gonna happen in the next, 6 to 7 months.
But that is the push, is to get it on the CIP for next year in FY '23.
That's-
That's the goal. The goal is to get this going and to get it on the warrant for next year. Yeah.
If the reaction from the public and everyone dictates that.
Right.
If it doesn't, then we won't, but that's the timing.
I mean, that's the ideal goal, is that you worked with this,
Correct.
it's ready, it's in CIP for next year.
So,
Yeah.
Something-
and obviously there's another part of this, which is for the staff and stuff like that, to think about what other public information is going to be provided. So an example would be is like when we were doing the new high schools, we actually videotaped and took photographs and things like that of the existing facility to look at what was going on. So people could actually go and kind of, without taking a literal tour, but giving people a virtual tour of the facilities.
Yeah.
There needs to be, part of this is really building the reason, the why. Why do we want to do this? And it's not because people are going to go, most of the people have never even been in those buildings.
Right.
So the question is how do you build the consensus of why this is an important project? If this is something that we need to take on as a group,
Well, I have an idea.
go ahead.
For our room for improvement, we said we needed to be interfacing with other committees more. There is I think, a communications committee. Maybe
Yeah.
That's a good one, thank you. That's a great one.
Right.
Well, there was, I can't remember what it was, but there was already an article about the public safety complex, right? Was that on Exeter TV or?
Seacoast Online had one.
Seacoast Online.
Yeah, Seacoast Online, Alex
Yeah.
Lepast did a study, but it's funny you say that, because part of the presentation, and I roughed out a presentation outline, it includes the chief's,
Yeah.
establishing a purpose and need, because that's kind of the start of it. And, to understand why are we doing it? It's the why, yes. Because and for example, I was talking to the police chief, and he was saying that, he has the original floor plan of that place, and you overlay what exists now, and it's completely different.
It's
And
really
you got
good.
detectives' offices where hallways were, originally, and so we are
it's-
trying to do that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good way, because the reality is that you want to go through all this, spend the money to do it, and then, not get the education for people to sit there and say, why do we need to spend, $15 million on a new safety, or $20 million on a safety complex? It has to be, there's got to be a compelling reason for people to do it, and besides arresting everybody in town and bringing them through.
Well, you tried. But no, I think that's a really good point, that has to be, kind of consistently replayed right before. So when this starts to go public, as far as sharing, get that out there. When it goes to the warrant, get that out there.
Communication committee would be a great way of saying, what can they do to help in that process?
Maybe on input too.
There's also a community relations, it's called a stakeholders committee.
Yeah.
It's primarily community relations between the police department and the residents.
Right.
I don't know
They still.
Community liaison.
if they represent any.
Well, and Bob said
Could be
that,
another one.
Bob had said he could do some of the videotaping and stuff like that right through when we
Yeah.
originally had talked about this, he said he had, they could help out as far as documenting some of these things.
All good feedback, and I'll tell them to watch this meeting, and also,
That's the last thing they
feel
wanted.
free to, we have time to gather that information. But the presentation outline was purpose and need. It wasn't gonna be,
Yep.
too long, but it was, that's what, the purpose and need, what has been done so far, the work of this committee, how we kind of got there, the RFQ process, briefly, kind of overview, and then, selection, and then pass it off to LaValle to explain their programming and, programming needs assessment, what they've done to date, the site evaluation, and the options, and then go from there. I mean, it's very early in the process here. So.
Great,
Okay,
thanks for the update.
sounds
Great.
good, yeah, that's helpful.
That's good.
So we're just about done. We'll do one more item, because Peter, you said you had a comment on the CIP item for the DPW.
Yeah, according to the Budget Recommendations Committee, they gave the DPW a full $50,000, half in the general fund, 12.5 in the sewer fund, 12.5 in the water fund, to actually, for design work on a new garage at the Public Works Complex, and that's what the warrant article says at this point, for the purpose of design work on the new garage. Unless the Budget Committee got later information than we have about the status of the thinking for the complex, and especially for the building, unless, and I'll defer to you all, unless you all think that they're ready to design something, which would be different from what our previous position was, I think we have to say that to the select board and say, hey, the way to do this is to do it the way we did with the public safety complex, do the feasibility study, and then we'll have some idea of what we need to design. But otherwise, it's a 40,000 square foot building, and who knows what else they're going to do with the complex, because they haven't done their master plan or anything else to be able to explain that to us. So just giving them the $50,000 and saying for the design work, I don't know, it could be a $40,000 building and a new fuel island. I mean, my sense was from everybody around the table was we would probably be okay with them designing a fuel island. But everything else about the facility, the garage, as well as the whole complex, we weren't ready to say they were ready for prime time on.
I don't think they're gonna get very far with 50,000 to design that building. But, so I think that terminology does have to be updated, because that doesn't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think for 50,000 they're gonna be able to design the building.
No,
So,
I thought too that our letter, we were just gonna say that we recommended an operational evaluation versus any.
Yes, I think
Yeah, we
that's
did.
accurate.
we didn't get that from the BRC though.
No, we didn't
prior
get
to
that.
this. So I think they would have helped us with that, but we just didn't, we weren't able to get
Yeah,
that.
but
to them.
but now we can get it to the select board.
Yeah.
So, were you thinking we just hew to our original? point
Well, I was
to the select
thinking,
board? Because that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, I guess, and I forgot that we had put the words operational assessment or feasibility study in. I think we need to foot stomp that, and I think we need to say that they're not ready for any design work.
Yeah.
With maybe the exception of the fuel island, if we want to even let that door crack open.
But I don't think what you're saying in the draft warrant article is even matching the warrant article that they had developed and was reviewed. I mean, I'm looking at Dave just because, I don't know, you're in my line of sight, but so that's what I'm pointing to.
I didn't have anything to do
But
with
if
that.
you go back to the warrant article that they drafted for that, I mean, they weren't asking necessarily for design. I think they had.
Oh, you're talking about the CIP page, aren't you? Not the warrant
Yeah, I'm sorry,
article.
the CIP write-up, yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at that, I mean, what they were asking for, you have it handy.
I just have a warrant article printout, but I don't even think that's in.
I don't think I think the warrant article language is really trying to summarize and generalize.
Yeah. Really.
I think it needs to be revised, Peter, so I agree with what you're saying. I don't think that language needs to be updated, I think, to.
Well, then if we said in our letter, instead of spending money on design work, we need to believe that there needs to be this other assessment or operational analysis. And then that the words in the warrant article need to be changed to I guess eliminate design, whatever you guys think, whatever how we should rewrite the warrant article. I think we need to.
Yeah.
Now, can we do that in time for Chris to send that in the letter?
Well, we had the letter drafted to the BRC.
Right.
So it's almost some of that language probably could go into the letter to the select board. I mean, it's our opinion.
Right.
We were all ready,
Yeah.
but we all felt that was appropriate, so.
Yeah.
Well, that's, and I anticipate leaving that in the letter.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
That's gonna be our recommendation to the select
Yeah.
board. We disagree with
We
the
already
BRC.
drafted it.
I haven't had a chance to talk to Bob about it.
Yeah, well, I think we have to say we
That ship has
disagree,
sailed. Yeah.
and that there's no way they're ready for prime
Yeah.
time design work.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll do that then.
Another paragraph for you to write.
Well, I think it's pretty much there.
Yeah.
I don't think I
Okay,
need to
good.
do much. So I
Okay.
think
No,
we're okay with that. All right.
Great.
Does anybody else have anything else they want to cover?
I don't. No.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? I think too.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings.